Today. Are you tired of living with stained and worn-out carpeting? Does the den look like bears spent the winter with you? Spring is here, and so is Empire Today's half off your project sale, starting now, but only for a limited time. Save 50% on a huge selection of carpet, hardwood, and laminate, standard padding and materials, and basic installation. Call the Empire Today half off your project sale hotline now.
1-855-385-0681.
Empire Today's free in-home estimates are easy and smart. Choose from high-quality flooring in the rooms where you'll use them, with your lighting, so you can see the color best. We'll do the measuring, you do the selecting and saving. But first, you must do the calling. Everyone loves the half off your project sale. Even bears. Call the Empire Today special hotline
1-855-385-0681. 1-855-385-0681.
Empire
Today. Select styles. Details at EmpireToday.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
So I've been taking the dog down to the park where she walked. It's like our time. A nice time together, knowing that she's missing, but walking the dog through there like she would do on most mornings is like a way to experience her right now for me. And a lot of times I can't make it very far. Make it part of the way. I certainly can't make it to the part of the park where currently there's a big poster of her up.
But Peterson knows at this moment police have focused their investigation on him. And when he arrived for the interview, before any tears, he said he wanted to address the questions about the girlfriend and himself first.
I think everybody sitting at home wants the answer to the same question. Did you murder your wife?
No, I did not. And I had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. And you use the word murder. And right now, everyone's looking for a body. And that is the hardest thing because that is not a possible resolution for us. And use the word murder, and yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. It's not one we're ready to accept, and it creeps in my mind late at night and early in the morning. And during the day, all we can think about is the right resolution is to find her well.
Did you ever hit her? Did you ever injure her?
No. My God, no. Violence towards women is unapproachable. It is the most disgusting act to me. And I know that suspicion has turned to me. And it's turned to me, one, because I'm her husband. And that's a natural thing. And I answered your question because of the suspicion that it's been turned to me. And it turned to me because of the inappropriate romantic that I had with Amber Friday.
And yes, he confirmed he did have the affair.
Why were you doing it?
I can't answer. I don't know. That's a question you should have an answer to. Definitely, I don't know.
Were you in love with her?
No. I'd have to say that I respect her. And as I imagine everyone does after seeing her come out and do the press conference. An amazing character she has.
Was this the first time? Are there others out there?
No.
There's no one else who can come forward?
No. Our romantic relationship. And that is it's inappropriate. It was inappropriate. And I owe a tremendous apology to everyone, obviously including Amber and her family and her friends and our families. This should have been brought forth by me immediately, the romantic relationship.
Had you told anyone? Did you tell police?
Told the police immediately.
When?
That was the first night we were together. The police, I spent with the police.
You told them about her?
Yeah, from December 24th on.
Did your wife find out about it?
I told my wife.
When?
In early December.
Did it cause a rupture in the marriage?
It was not a positive, obviously. It's inappropriate. But it was not something that we weren't dealing with.
A lot of arguing?
No. I can't say that even, she was okay with the idea. But it wasn't anything that would break us apart.
There wasn't a lot of anger?
No.
Do you really expect people to believe that an 8.5-month pregnant woman learns her husband has had an affair and is saintly and casual about it? Accommodating? Makes a peace with it?
Well, you don't know. No one knows our relationship but us. And that's at peace with it, not happy about it.
Why did you tell her?
It was the right thing. There's no other reason than that.
And did you see her again after you told Lacey?
Yes.
You saw Amber again?
I did.
But didn't tell her?
Didn't tell Lacey.
Didn't tell Amber?
No, yeah. That was definitely not the right thing.
Because again, you know that people sitting at home have imagined that either you were in love with someone else, therefore you decided to get rid of this entanglement, namely your wife and your child, or there was just an angry confrontation.
Neither of those was the case. It's that simple.
What about Lacey's family?
They're wonderful people. They're obviously upset with me about the romantic relationship with Amber. And they have little trust, as they've expressed in the media to date. But I believe that they're still looking for Lacey, and I would like to work with them. And I think we'll be together on this effort, continue to look for them.
And good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us here tonight on King Jordan Radio for April 16th, 2015. This is King Jordan Radio, and you are listening to Scott Peterson 10 years later with an all-star panel. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a team of all-stars. First of all, out of Florida, she is a body language expert. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from SusanConstantine.com. She analyzes Scott Peterson and other people for a living, and she's a jury consultant. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Susan Constantine. Good evening, Susan, and welcome to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great tonight, Jordan. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. The next guest that we have here is a former New York City prosecutor, a legal analyst. She's covered every minute of this trial. She is now, you can now find her on CarisOnCrime.com. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Miss Beth Caris. Good evening, Beth, and welcome to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
I'm fine, Jordan. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, out of Connecticut, he is a legal defense attorney. He is an author of How Can You Defend These People, formerly with the popular Court TV network. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, making his return, the one and only Mickey Sherman. Good evening, Mickey, and welcome back to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
Good to be here. Can't you get some fake applause or something to follow this up? I mean, what's that? Why not? Just a chuckle or something.
Well, Beth Karras, you did cover this trial from every minute, and I want to go to you first. Let's start off. When you started covering this story, at one point, did you know in your heart that it was Scott? Beth, let me start with you.
Did I know in my heart that it was Scott, that he was guilty?
That he was the one behind this.
I thought that before I was covering the trial. It just seemed that everything seemed to point to him. I mean, he could never be ruled out, and then his behavior was so suspicious. But, of course, as I heard more and more evidence, that, confirmed what I believed going into the trial, because he was driving 90 miles from Modesto to the San Francisco Bay to watch law enforcement searching the waters of the bay. Not talking to anybody. He would just go out there, stand. They were watching him. They were surveilling him, and then leave. He was just acting strangely, not like somebody whose wife was truly missing. Not to mention that at the candlelight vigil, he was talking to Amber Fry. Candlelight vigil for the missing Lacey. She disappeared December 23rd. She was last seen on the 23rd, 2002. New Year's Eve at a candlelight vigil for the missing Lacey. He's on the phone with Amber Fry saying that he's in Paris and Brussels and, in Europe for the holidays. And he was being filmed at the vigil. I mean, he just, there was just so much evidence, I believe, pointing to him.
And Mickey Sherman, let's go to you. When you started seeing this case unravel, did you know right away, and if so, about Scott Peterson?
Well, he must be guilty. He got arrested.
Well, that's not true, Mickey.
Well, yes.
We know that.
I'm just kidding. By the way, do you guys really understand and appreciate that you have on the line? Susan, I'm sorry, I don't know you, Billy, but I do admire your work. But with Beth Karras, you have the equivalent of legal Google. There is nothing.
You're very kind, Billy.
It's true. And you and I started together, I think, in 1990, right?
We did. Actually, you predated me because that case that really catapulted you.
I dated you or predated you?
What's that?
I dated you or predated you, or both?
No, you predated my days at Court TV.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up. But to answer your question, the long since forgotten King, what I kept saying, and I really will take credit, when this whole case started, everyone's looking for Lacey. I said, stop looking for Lacey, look for the girlfriend. And that was like weeks before they ever found out who Amber Fry existed.
Interesting.
And Susan, I want to go to you. You heard the interview. You saw it with your own eyes. As a body language expert, what did you make of seeing that interview with Diane Sawyer?
Gosh, there was so much, Jordan. Well, the first thing that I noticed was his forced cry. You could see it in his mouth, the way he was moving his mouth and kind of pushing his mouth forward and forcing himself to cry was the number one. And, reading facial expressions is really the most accurate way to read true felt emotions. And, it was really interesting watching him try to shed those tears, yet there was no indication of sadness. In fact, what you saw was an indicator of what we call duping delight. And that is when a person is so highly narcissistic, where they feel like they pulled one over on you, that they appear to be believable. There's a sense of arousal that happens, and you see them smiling. So as he's talking and he's trying to force his cry, his voice is strained, and there's no movement in his forehead of sadness, of pain, or suffering. And when you're watching the interview, that was consistent the way through. And then especially when they were talking about when Diane Sawyer asked him if he had anything to do with her disappearance, and he goes, "Oh, no, just very nonchalant. Oh, no, of course not, you know." And then he goes on to say, and he's laughing, he's smiling when he's talking about, he actually uses the word murder, and which is really odd, you know, to be using the word murder, because he's already viewed her as dead, because otherwise he wouldn't have used the word murder. So only a murderer uses those kind of words. So anyway, you know, with him laughing, or I shouldn't say, not openly laughing and chuckling, but these were concealed emotions. You could see it leaking out through the smile and trying to conceal it as if he was being, he was sad. But, you know, when you know how to read facial expressions and you see no sadness, you understand what muscles have to fire in the face in order to show those true emotions, and they weren't existent. They were non-existent. He was a flat-out liar. So that Diane Sawyer one, that did it for me.
I totally agree with you. And Beth, how important was Lacey's testimony for prosecutors?
I mean, Amber Fry's testimony.
Amber Fry, I'm sorry. Yes, Amber Fry.
Well, her testimony was very important because that provided a motive for the jury. And she was a very good witness. She was represented by Gloria Allred, who did a great job keeping Amber Fry away from the media so that she never gave an interview to anyone. So, she was really well prepared as a witness. And I think she did a great job. I met her only after the trial when she came to New York to do a round of interviews, and, found her to be just a very sweet woman who seemed to be very, very sincerely, betrayed by this man, and she cooperated with the authorities as soon as someone in her life, a friend or relative, told her, hey, this guy you're seeing, he's the one with the missing wife. She put it together, and she cooperated with the police and recorded her phone conversations with Scott, which were really important to the state's case.
Mickey, your thoughts on Amber Fry's testimony for prosecutors?
I don't know. I thought it was kind of generic for myself. I was not all that impressed by her. But having not answered that question, let me answer a better question. You talked about the interview with Diane Sawyer. There was another interview that was done. Beth, I'm sure you can remember this. Remember that Gloria Gomez interview?
Yes.
Yes.
Gloria Gomez was, and probably still is, a local reporter out there for probably one, I think NBC affiliate or one station out there.
She went down to Tampa after that, but she was up there in the Bay Area or Sacramento.
She's doing an interview, a TV interview with Scott Peterson, and there's nothing that's really interesting about the interview except this is while Lacey is still missing and gone. In the middle of the interview, his cell phone goes off, and
that's right.
rather than answer it, he just says, "That's okay, I'll get it later." And meanwhile, this is a guy whose wife is missing, presumed murdered or God knows where, and he didn't take the time off from a local TV interview to answer the phone when it could very well be the fact that they found his wife. And then they realized that later on, and if I'm not mistaken, they used that during the case.
Right.
Which is when you do a TV interview, you never expect that it's going to wind up incriminating you.
Susan, what does that tell you about Scott Peterson, that he didn't answer his telephone during that interview that Mickey's alluding to?
Well, there's a couple of things that come to my mind, which is, number one, concealment. Concealment is when they don't want, of course we know what concealment is, that he may not have wanted somebody to know who was calling them. So that's one thing, but we don't know that for sure. The second thing is it wasn't important to him. Wasn't it, he didn't care. So, it's really interesting when, I did 2 classes back-to-back this past week. I was just doing a 5-hour CLE training program to a group of attorneys here in Orlando. We reviewed a lot of videos and so forth. And the techniques that I'm talking about, I showed video, and one of them was Scott Peterson. And, behavior evidence is really important when you put it all together. may seem insignificant. Well, he didn't pick up the phone. Why? Well, then that's just one kind of like red mark on his record. But when you start going through the whole entire list over a period of time, they all start to add up, and it creates a high level of suspicion. So they're not just one clue; it's multiple clues. And when you've got multiple clues, there's a darn good chance that if it quacks like a duck, it's usually a duck. So my overall feeling is that he didn't pick it up is because he didn't care. He was diverting his attention towards something else. And here's the other thing is, when people are lying, deceitful, there's a sense of cognitive load that builds, and they don't really react appropriately because they're trying so hard to appear normal, to appear truthful, that there's other giveaways. So they start doing stupid things that don't make sense, like not picking up the phone. Because why? His mind was somewhere else. He was trying to control other areas of his deception, and so he was not so good at controlling everything. And that's what happens when there's a high level of cognitive load. To be able to cover up your lies, you're gonna mess up.
No question. We do have a quote from Tom Mesereau, defense attorney out of Los Angeles, and then I want to go to Beth and get her opinion on what Tom says. This is about an hour ago. He said, the defense of Scott Peterson was the most incompetent defense in a capital murder case that I have ever seen. The lead defense lawyer was inexperienced and over his head. His failure to appear at the verdict during the guilt phase was inexcusable. It sent a terrible message to the jury as they were about to begin the penalty phase. His lack of proper preparation for the penalty phase was a disaster. This was a case where the defendant had no prior criminal history. The prosecutor could not prove the time of death, the cause of death, or the place of death. In the Unabomber, the Olympic City bomber and convicted terrorists who tried to bomb America's airplanes have escaped the death penalty. These individuals each had experienced and competent defensive counsel. Okay, Beth Karras, I want to go to your take on Mr. Mesereau's take on Mark Geragos.
Okay. All right. First of all, he's talking about Mark Geragos. Let me just add to what Tom said in terms of competent counsel. As inexperienced as Jose Baez was, he got an acquittal for Casey Anthony when you can't, same thing, you couldn't determine where the little baby Kaylee died, how she died, when she died. So, similar questions. And the jurors were troubled by that, and they acquitted Casey Anthony. Jose Baez had a much more experienced attorney assisting him, though, right? In any event, Tom Mesereau has come down very hard on Mark Geragos, but it is absolutely true that Mark Geragos did not have a mitigation specialist until after the guilty verdict. A mitigation specialist is on board a capital defense team from the very beginning, before jury selection, and is there assisting right from the beginning. That is what occurred in all these other cases where the defendant has successfully escaped death or even a conviction. He didn't get a mitigation expert until after the guilty verdict. The judge gave a 2-week adjournment or so. It was in November. It was around Thanksgiving. And he consulted, and that mitigation expert who came on board, I don't remember who it was stuck with the jury who was selected, all the evidence that was already in, and didn't have a whole lot to work with. So, I totally understand where Tom Mesereau is coming from, and many people believe that Scott Peterson, even if he should have been convicted, should have escaped death.
Mickey, let's go over to you as a defense attorney. Tom's word. So, what's your take on that?
I was there. I saw Mark Geragos perform. I had a couple of lunches with him. I think I had dinner one night with him. The only thing that was missing from that trial were the pitchforks and torches by the people from the community. The deck was totally stacked against him in terms of the pulse of the community. Now, that may not excuse not doing something he should have done, but he had a very difficult time. The other situation, which sounds unforgivable and it really is a wonderment, is where he didn't appear for the
guilty verdict.
Yeah, which I spoke to him about that. That was not his choice. It was the judge in another jurisdiction demanded that he be there in this other judge's court for whatever procedure they had then. And when you're a lawyer, you're pushed and you're pulled and you're sometimes raked over the coals by judges, and that's what was happening to him. Argument could be made that he should have just let himself be found in contempt on the Los Angeles case and appear for Scott Peterson.
Interesting. And Susan, I want to go back to you. What did you make of Amber Fry? Did you see confidence in her? What did you see in her?
Well, the first time that I saw her when she was doing the press conference, and you can tell that she obviously was very shaken. It was consistent. When I'm detecting whether someone's being deceptive or misleading, I'm looking for things that aren't matching up. Their body language is saying one thing, and their words are saying something different, or their pitch or their tone is just not. It's not consistent or congruent with all the other what we call the 5 communication channels. But when you watch her, everything was consistent. So that was telling me that she was really upset. It was obvious. Her voice was cracking. She was sad. She had shed tears. She tried to remain strong throughout it. You could tell that she was fighting the tears, trying to remain cool and collected. But overall, when I watched her throughout, I thought that she was very good. She was consistently truthful throughout. I didn't see any signs of deception or anything that was misleading. I thought that she was forthright the entire time, and she worked along with the police department and detectives to be able to help figure out what really happened to Lacey. So I thought she did a great job, and as a deception detection expert, there was nothing there that I would have said that she was misleading or being deceitful at all.
And Beth, we saw this with Aaron Hernandez. How do you grasp, this guy had pretty much everything. He's rich. People say he has the looks. Why would he do such an awful thing? Any ideas?
I'm no psychologist, but it is, of course, something that I think about when I've been going into courtrooms, first trying cases and then reporting on them for almost 3 decades. And so many times I look at a defendant and I say, what went wrong? Where was the wrong turn? Especially when you have no criminal history, like Scott Peterson. He had opportunities in life that we see a lot of people in the criminal justice system don't have. Right? They're a little bit marginalized and from a lower socioeconomic background, lesser education. Here he was, college educated, upper middle class family, and he had his whole life in front of him, and he threw it away because apparently he didn't want to be a father, and he really wasn't crazy about the impending birth of their son, who, by the way, would be 12 years old today. So he should have been born in February of 2003. So I don't know. Is he really like a sociopath? I can't explain it. Was he really having such a great relationship and great sex with Amber Fry that he just wanted to throw everything away and be with her? I can't explain it.
Yeah, it is kind of unexplainable.
I do have the answer.
Yeah, I want to remark on that. I want to talk about that for just a minute. First of all, those that commit these heinous crimes are not people that you would suspect. These are people that are charming, they're likable, they're charismatic. They are types of people that you would, let them into your living room within 30 seconds of meeting them. They're, in order for them to follow through such types of crimes, they actually need that kind of narcissistic personality to be able to do it and follow, because people will believe them. So, when we're talking about the difference between sociopaths and psychopaths, I mean, I do have a master's degree in psychology, so I feel like I can speak to this. And that is that with someone like Scott Peterson or Hernandez, they are not psychopaths. Okay, psychopaths are people that sociopaths. Sociopaths are those type of people that really have, they live in their own reality. Okay, this is like the Holmes case, the guy that opened fired in the theater. They have their own sense of reality. These are the ones that would kill their children because they feel that God is telling them to do so. So they have their own reality. The other type of person is one that has the lack of empathy. They just don't have that barometer. They don't really care. Now they have lots of empathy for themselves, like a Casey Anthony. But Scott Peterson and Hernandez the same way. Is that narcissism to the extreme, and that's why they're able to carry it out, because they have this godlike syndrome.
And Mickey, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, naturally I follow the narcissism description. But the answer is really best stated by Kathy Lee Gifford when she said that sometimes good people do bad things. Now, she wasn't talking about Scott Peterson. I think she was talking about her husband at the time, but it still holds true. And it's always good to laugh as well. One other thing that I want to mention, which you're not asking about, but I just found fascinating, and that is the spectacle of the big trial. And the big trial brings out the big nuts. Beth, remember the guy who would walk around with the sign? He was like from another planet. People came from all over the country. I remember they gotten together in chat rooms and they made the trial their trip for the year, for the decade. And they would be at the courthouse. They would recognize people like me and Beth, people who were on TV and covering it for other networks. So they always shared stuff with us. And I remember one day on a Friday when the court recessed, they invited me to go with them. They rented a boat and they were going to look for Lacey's body. Absolutely bizarre. The other thing is the phenomenon of the way the networks were treated. Usually at the big case, all around the parking lots and nearby, there's the satellite trucks, as much as 20 or 30 of them, and then these like 12 by 12 tents where people like Beth or me or whatever would do stand-ups, interviews with the networks all day. When the network got to Redwood City was ready to make a fortune on them, and they had set up with tape 12 by 12 boxes in front of the courthouse, and told the networks that each one could buy a box or rent it for the duration of the trial for $55,000. And the networks basically told them to go to hell. And what they did is they went to parking lots and garage and rooftops in the neighborhood right there and set up there. They went to local law offices and got people, law firms, to let them use their spaces and kind of went around them. It just, again, has nothing to do with the trial, but it's just a fascinating phenomenon of what happens when the circus comes to town.
And another observation, very interesting, Mickey, I had forgotten that about the cost of the space in front of the courthouse, which kept it pretty clear, and we were kind of scattered all around until verdict time. There was a throng, hundreds of people out front, and I did have a live shot right in front of the courthouse for the two verdicts, and security and sort of like a fence around me to just keep the people away because there were throngs. What was happening that summer, though? This was the summer of 2004. He was sentenced in March of 2005, so it's been 10 years since he was sentenced the same day Robert Blake was acquitted. In fact, I was at Blake's acquittal. And we sent Vinnie Politan up to Modesto because he was sentenced in Modesto, not Redwood City. But the summer of 2004, I mean, I'm outside the courtroom until the end of the day. And I would go in for the last few hours of the day because we were off air at Court TV, or maybe Catherine Crier's show had just wrapped up, and it was still, 3 hours earlier in California. I still a little time to get into court. I was getting the equivalent of tweets and and just emails from a producer who you could bring a computer in the courtroom and there was an overflow room, who was sending me information. Twitter didn't exist. Okay, there was no Twitter. He was just sending it to me, and I was reading my BlackBerry. And trial wasn't televised. People think it was because we had the Amber Fried tapes and pictures and some video from some hearings. But I was reading my BlackBerry, and other people were probably doing something similar. That summer, Mark Zuckerberg was developing Facebook with some of his Harvard classmates in Palo Alto, about a mile from the hotel I was staying. So he was there that summer developing Facebook. Twitter would come along. It was you can't cover trials the same anymore. Today it's so different. There's the live tweeting from the courtroom, and information is instantaneous, even if there's no camera. If it's allowed. In the Holmes trial, there will be a camera in Colorado, but no devices in the courtroom. So only a pen and paper, and in terms of tweets, that'll happen outside the courtroom during breaks. However, the case will be televised.
If I can add just one thing.
The case will be televised. But what about this idea? Go ahead, man.
Can I follow that up with something?
Go ahead, man.
Can you hear me okay? Well,
yes.
As Beth described, there was Wi-Fi in the courtroom, and it wasn't a televised trial, so the networks would all rely upon whoever they have inside the courtroom to relay, this is what's going on, that's what's going on. Beth, am I right about that?
Yes, and I would read it. I was outside reading it.
Exactly. But there were a lot of Beths, and there were a lot of people inside the courtroom. So at one point, I was there with somebody I wasn't there for CBS, but was also there with somebody from Fox who I married. And she had to go outside the courtroom for something, and there was no other Fox producer inside the courtroom other than they asked, could I just relay whatever happens over the next 20 minutes because they need somebody to relay stuff. And, of course, I said, okay, I'll be happy to. And I start to type in on my computer over there that Mark Garagos is just being put in a headlock by Scott Peterson, and they're having a fist fight on the floor. I started making up all this. It was hysterical. All of a sudden, somebody comes in racing into the courtroom and says, can this really go out? It was about 30 seconds from being going out. They wanted to kill me.
I'm sure they did. You were ever the Joker, Mickey. Oh, no, that's terrible. Of course they thought you were serious.
It was hysterical. I had this whole scenario. Then I had the mothers were fighting each other, and I kept typing like a whiz, and they wanted to kill me.
Beth, what about this idea that he wants a new trial on the basis of that the son wasn't born, something to that extent? What's your thoughts on him?
So he's challenging. Well, I have to admit, I have not read all of these briefs, and the Attorney General filed their response brief in January of this year. It's 500 pages. But the challenge to fetal homicide is, the California law is pretty well settled. California doesn't say that that Connor was a human being. They just say any fetus post the embryonic stage, it's like 6 to 8 weeks forward, that's considered a murder if you terminate unlawfully, not an abortion, but otherwise unlawfully. And so his death, the jury found to be second-degree murder. He was probably viable. He was going to be born in about 6 or 7 weeks. He probably could have survived outside the womb, but of course there's no evidence that he ever took a breath. He was still inside the womb when she died. So he may be challenging the statute that says any fetus 6 or 8 weeks and beyond can be a victim of a homicide or murder.
And Susan, I want to go over to you. In those interviews, if you were just the average person and the average person is listening right now and they didn't know much about the case, what would you say to them of watching those interviews that you could pick up in Scott Peterson's interview that really stands out in some of the stuff that he said to Diane and the other interviewer?
Well, if I understand you correctly, you're asking me that if a layperson were watching those videos, what would they surmise from them? What should they be looking for?
Right.
Is that what they?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, go ahead. Was I right? Is that clear, or am I missing it?
Yes. What could you see in Scott Peterson if you're new to the show, if you never followed it? And what's some of the strong points that you saw when you watched the interview with Diane Sawyer that really stand out?
The lack of real genuine emotion, the lack of genuine concern and remorse, or the demeanor throughout. His lies, where he's saying that he's in Italy and Brussels or where was it? Or London or England? Where was he? Was supposed to be somewhere else, and he was, and it was just phenomenal. I mean, the stories just didn't match up. They were just so grandiose. They were huge. It wasn't like he just had small little lies. They were massive. So, from a lay person, looking in and going, what is it about Scott Peterson that really stood out? It all really boils down to is that his emotions were not appropriate for what he was going through and what the family was going through. It just didn't fit. And that's the biggest clue, because, when I'm training people, I'm telling them to look for things that don't connect. Where's the disconnect? And you can't fake crying where there's no movement in his forehead, unless he's had Botox shot in his forehead, which he didn't have. He didn't show any sense of remorse, and it was forced. And to me, even being a body language expert, a lay person could pick that up. It just didn't move you. Here's the other barometer. Did you really feel sad and remorseful when he was crying? Did it move you to feel anything? See,
no.
It should move you. If it were authentic, it should move the listener to feel the same emotion. Sense, sadness, remorse, concern. Yet, what it did was it made you look at him going, something's not right. That kind of BS barometer was up high. Something's not feeling good. Something's not right. It's that gut response.
Didn't they get his phone records and his phone calls? Didn't they at one point? Didn't they get his phone calls, his answering machine? Beth, you called that?
I don't. His answering machine. I don't remember his answering machine. They might have. I just remember all the recorded calls with Amber.
Well, the person who was quoted most in all his phone calls was Rita Cosby.
Oh, right. They did
do you remember that?
They did get his messages. You're right.
She left about 100 messages for him. She was CNN or Fox at that point. I've long since forgotten. And she's calling him to get an interview
at that time.
That could be. And the most hysterical one was when she calls up and he answers the phone, but doesn't respond by talking. He just lets her talk. And then he finally says, F you, Rita. Except he doesn't say F.
Yeah.
Absolutely hysterical. And that became part of a motion in front of the judge. There was some odd motion.
Absolutely. And Beth, let me ask you two things. First of all, when they came in, they found out he was ordering porn and canceling it. First, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, right. Shortly after she disappeared, he started, that's right, he was ordering the porn at home. And, I mean, that's behavior that certainly sounds like it's a man who knows she's not coming back, and I believe the prosecution used it, argued it that way. I mean, he knew she wasn't coming back. He was changing his lifestyle. He got the freedom that he had hoped for. He didn't want to be a father. He wanted to be free of Lacey, and he was going to live the life he wanted, at least until mid-April when he got caught.
Mickey, your thoughts on him ordering the porn?
I think it meant nothing. I think that these days porn means nothing. It's all available on the computer, and I don't think it says anything about the guy's character, or certainly not his culpability. he just came across as just very slippery. You just did not want to believe me. It was, as you've all seen, they've kind of portrayed that same scenario in the movie Gone Girl. And the way Jason Bateman appeared, that's exactly the way Scott Peterson appeared. Like the kid next door who maybe went bad.
Beth, your thoughts on Judge Alfred, I can't pronounce his last name.
DeLucci?
I think it is.
DeLucci.
Yes.
You know, the judge, DeLucci was the trial judge, right? Because there were two that I got to know, one in Modesto, and DeLucci passed away, right, a couple of years ago. Very, I don't remember a lot, quite frankly, but I was impressed generally with the pace of the trial and the rulings. Although I remember thinking that Mark Garagos was able to get away with a little bit too much regarding third-party culpability. He was allowed to get in a lot of these tips that were coming out, and I thought that was perhaps a little too generous to the defense. Although maybe because it was a capital case, he thought, I better err on the safe side and not have this case come back, be reversed.
Garagos liked him a lot. We talked about that when I was out there.
Yeah.
He thought it was great, and he did err on behalf of the defendant, which is always the easier way to go.
Yeah.
And Beth, the strongest evidence against Scott Peterson, in your opinion?
The strongest evidence. This is a case where it was just little bits here and there put together. The fact that he had bought a boat 3 weeks earlier that nobody knew about. The family didn't know about this boat. Seemed to indicate premeditation, but probably the fact that he drove 90 miles to the San Francisco Bay to go fishing, so he said, on Christmas Eve day when he was due to be at Lacey's parents' home for Christmas Eve dinner, early evening, yet he's out there fishing, and he was seen out there. That and then her body washed ashore, of course, in April 13th and 14th. Connor and Lacey, they washed ashore a quarter of a mile apart, a day apart. So the bodies were recovered in the bay where he was fishing very suspiciously. Nobody knew he had a boat. He hadn't. It was just very odd behavior. So that was probably the strongest evidence. In fact, at the press conference after the verdict, I asked the prosecutors if they would have gone forward with this case if the bodies hadn't been recovered, and I got opposite answers. Some were nodding and some were shaking their heads, yes and no. So I don't know if they ever would have prosecuted him if the bodies hadn't washed ashore in the San Francisco Bay. That's the best evidence against him.
And Mickey, a different question for you. Let me ask you, what would you do in hindsight, 2020, as a defense attorney, knowing what you know now? Which tactics might you have tried?
I would have charged him a lot more money. I would have charged a boatload of money, and I would have tried to make a deal. And by the way, it was Ben Affleck who starred in Gone Girl.
Yeah, Ben Affleck.
Jason Bateman, I stand corrected. But, King, people think that defense lawyers spin a wheel and decide what defense we're going to use. We have to go with the tools that are the cards that we're dealt with. And sometimes you don't have a lot to work with. And very often you don't believe your client, but it's not for us to believe or not believe it. You just got to put your head down and do your best job. He was just such a despicable-looking kind of guy and a weasel that you couldn't diffuse that. And as Beth just talked about the things he did, the fact that he called her at one point and said he was in Italy, if I'm not mistaken.
Brussels and Paris.
Right. Yet he was 2 miles away. Once they proved that he's a liar, that everything kind of went down the tubes.
Yeah, he was a pathological liar, but there are people, Susan, that wanted to actually marry Scott. What's your thoughts on that?
They're not. That's what I think. There are people that love that that, why does somebody want to marry Charlie Manson? Why does someone want to marry Joran Vandersloot? Why does anybody want to marry somebody that has been proven to be a killer?
So how about just one of the Menendez brothers?
What's that? Yeah, the Menendez brothers.
How about one of the Menendez brothers, Eric or Lyle? You pick either one. One of them has got to be suitable. Sorry, Susan.
They think that there's something about women. I don't know what it is about some of these women. Let's just back up. Wasn't there in the Casey Anthony case? Wasn't the death penalty attorney married to a guy in death row?
Jeff Heston?
I don't remember that.
I don't know that. That's news to me. From Chicago? The death penalty attorney, she just picked the jury and then she was out. The one from Chicago?
Yes. I think that she is either married to a guy that is in prison for murder on death row.
Nobody's perfect.
Well, I got to look that up.
Right. Nobody's perfect.
Did they
they're just wackos.
I think they have JJ.
And Jeanette Connor says, you saw at the Arias trial, people were coming to court and for taking vacations, and with all these trials, they bring, like as Mickey pointed out earlier, it's almost becoming like a show up at Garris.
It's a carnival.
Jodi Arias.
I've seen that in a number of trials, but Phoenix in the winter, and in 2003, Jodi Arias' trial was January to May. I mean, it's a vacation spot, so people are like, I can go to the Southwest and pop in at the trial. And I met a number of people who decided to take a vacation and stop in. Same thing this year. Not as many people. The trial wasn't televised, but for the retrial of the penalty phase. So, yes, I mean, people do that. And, they over the years, I mean, I'm sure Mickey experienced this. Maybe you did too, Susan. I mean, I've certainly been in people's living rooms for 19 years when I was at Court TV and HLN, and they felt like they knew me and wanted to come and meet me. And it was always very, very flattering, and I always enjoy meeting people who are avid trial watchers because it's kind of what I've devoted a lot of my career to. So I enjoy, people's enthusiasm in meeting them.
One interesting thing is when you talk about going out there to a destination to comment on, in Redwood City, if you had to do a morning show, like I was with CBS at that time, that means you're live at 4 in the morning out there. So you're in front of a camera on the roof of a garage in the absolute dark of the night. It's like 3:15, 3:30, and then you go live at 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the evening. It's not as glamorous and fun as it necessarily sounds.
That's right. Mickey, I was doing the same thing, but once a week for the early show for CBS. Yeah. And sometimes they wanted me there at 3 in the morning. I'd get up at 1:30 to do my hair and makeup and to be there for 3. And then I would work all day. So if I went to bed at 10 at night, I got up at 1:30 a.m. and I was working straight through into the evening the next day. It was really too much for me. I finally told them to bring the satellite truck to my hotel. I just couldn't get to the courthouse.
Well, I rented a Harley Davidson.
For my audience,
I wake myself up by going back and forth.
Can you tell the listening audience, since you did follow the trial for every minute, what kind of person Lacey Peterson was? Because this is what this is all about,
for me?
Ultimately. Yes, Beth.
Oh, Lacey was, by all accounts, just a lovely human being who wanted desperately to have a home and a family. She was a great cook. She, was so looking forward to Connor. She grew up in Modesto. She was very close to her mother, Sharon. She was the only daughter of her mother and father. She has a sister, a half-sister. And she had seen her sister as a hairstylist the day she died, the day she disappeared. I mean, her sister was one of the last people to see her. But Sharon Rocha, her mother, was so close to her, and, I'm sure a day does not go by where she doesn't think about Lacey and the grandson she never had. She does have an older brother, Brett, who lived in the Sacramento area last I knew, who has children. So Sharon Rocha does have grandchildren.
And how old was she?
I don't remember.
30,
she was like 27, 28, no more than 30. I don't remember off the top of my head how old she was when she died. Late 20s, 30. She had her whole life ahead of her.
Wow.
If Beth doesn't know, nobody knows.
Oh no, it's only because I've been reading about it, but I didn't read her age. It's just there's so much in my head, Mickey. Right? I don't
Exactly.
her age. I'm sorry, you got me there, Jordan.
But Beth, people now that could find you, you opened up a wonderful website. Why don't you tell my audience all about it and how they can become a member of your site,
Sure.
Paris on Crime?
It's called CarisOnCrime.com. It's a subscription site. I launched it to cover Jodi Arias' retrial because I was living in Phoenix. So it's $5.99 a month. But I put video up there where I do legal analysis. I write blogs. I also get documents. I have more coming in the Jodi Arias case. I put the entire trial up in Jodi Arias as well. But now I'm moving in. I'm going to relaunch a newly designed site in a couple weeks, and I will be following James Holmes, Robert Durst. I'm just obsessed with that case because he's really a fascinating defendant. Robert Durst and other trials coming up. So I'm just sort of taking my legal expertise and my analysis and putting it on a website, but I'll be developing it more.
And that's
I just logged on. It looks really good.
Everything is now. And Susan, let me go over to you. You have a great website, and you teach people. Why don't you tell the audience how they can get in touch with you and your teaching?
The best way to get in touch with me is just to go to my website. Just Google my name, SusanConstantine.com, and you'll see how you can get in touch with me in the courses that I teach, the areas where I'll be teaching, and some of the DVDs, workbooks, and books, and so forth that you can purchase on SusanConstantine.com. By the way, I'm going to be in New York City tomorrow until Monday. I might be giving you a call, King, just to see what you're doing, see what you're up to.
Oh, really? What part?
New York City.
What part?
New York City.
I know, but what borough?
You know what, I got to tell you, my boyfriend booked the flight, and he also booked the hotel, and I have no idea what hotel he's got to book. I'll find out when I get off the airplane. But I know we're right in Manhattan.
Well, bring the credit card.
I know, what did they
bring the credit card.
Got a huge big bonus. This is a
it's
trip
not
on
cheap
him.
compared to where you are. Right, Beth?
Oh, I know.
New York City.
Yeah, I know. I just got home from New Jersey just the day before yesterday. Yes, what's that?
How could you defend those people? Mickey Sherman's book that came out in the spring of 2008. Mickey, why don't you tell the audience about your book?
It's called How Can You Defend Those People? And it basically is a kind of a laminate backstage all-access pass to the criminal justice system and the world of TV trials. I have a lot about that. But it's pretty funny, actually, and it's also been optioned for a TV miniseries or TV movie by Barry Levinson and Tom Fontana. So if that goes, it'll be a lot of fun as well.
Great. That sounds cool.
Okay, before we run out of here, just want to get a couple opinions of Jodi Arias. Beth, you covered the case from A to Z. What was your opinion when she took Jodi, when she went to testify and basically called out the Alexanders by name and a lot of people on HLN didn't like it. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, it was rather shocking to me. I was in the courtroom on Monday. You're talking about when she made a statement to the court just before the sentence was pronounced of natural life. She was responding to statements made by the victim, Travis Alexander's siblings, who several of them made statements. And it was just shocking to me and to everybody there that she was being rather insensitive. I mean, I think she knew that she was not going to get a parolable life sentence. It was going to be a natural life without parole or without release is what they call it in Arizona. But she suddenly was no longer foggy in the head about the crime itself when she stabbed and slit the throat of Travis Alexander. She stabbed him 29 times. She remembered that he was still alive when she slit his throat. I mean, it was punishment on the family that she was doing this, and it was just shocking. I wanted to settle this case, but they wouldn't. Well, she didn't tell them that she wanted second-degree murder and not first-degree.
Right, she left that out.
Yeah, she left that out. So I just thought it was unnecessary and cruel to do to the family.
And what about the mother? You came to know Jodi Arias' mother. She thought that Jodi was a victim in that interview, and she said Jodi will never get married and this and that.
Yeah, I really didn't come to know Sandy. I just saw her at the courthouse. Never spent any time with her or had any conversation except a few brief ones in the hallway. But that was shocking that she said that she and her, I think, younger daughter had seen bruises on Jodi's neck and her arms and stuff, and that does not seem to be true.
She couldn't testify.
Because the defense attorney never heard that before. That was new information. So I think she's just, I think she just was saying what she wanted to be true, but it wasn't.
Okay, they said she was 27, Lacey, when she died. Christine in the chat did. Okay, and Mickey, your thoughts of what Jodi did in the courtroom a couple of days ago?
I always thought she was bizarre, but then again, I always thought the prosecutors were a little bizarre when he I forgot his name. I'm sure you know his name, Beth. And when he got one-on-one with, he would just go back and forth with her. She was the defendant. He was according her more respect and regard than she deserved. And he was letting. I mean, it came to the point where she was winning most of the bouts. I always just thought that was amazing.
No question about it. Susan Constantine, your thoughts on Jodi Arias?
Well, guys, I've got to let you go. I'd love to be able to comment on that, but I am kind of pressed for time right now. So I'm going to have to leave all of you and pick up at a later time. So it was nice being on your show, King. Talk to you soon,
Thanks,
Beth, and
Susan.
also to Mickey. It was nice being on the show with you guys.
Okay, safe travels.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, and the final thing before we... Yes. Aaron Hernandez also sentenced yesterday, and just sentenced the same day. Beth Karras, your thoughts on Aaron Hernandez and the guilty verdict? Surprised? Not surprised?
No, I'm not surprised, but I did not see every minute of that trial. I had too much. It was going on simultaneously with Jodi Arias, and then when I got back to New York after the Arias trial, I had just so much going on that I couldn't follow it. But I'm in detail. But I'm familiar with the evidence, and I'm not surprised at the verdict. And he was sentenced right away because I believe there was just no discretion for the judge. That's the sentence it was. It wasn't like with Jodi Arias, so there was theoretically a sentence of natural life or life with a possibility of release after 25 years, and hence it was put over, for the judge to ponder her decision, although everyone thought it was going to be what she got, natural life. In any event, I'm not surprised with Aaron Hernandez, and now he'll be facing another double homicide trial soon enough.
Yeah, Mickey, 25 years, 23 at the time of the crime, now convicted. There was a lot of bad things said about him in his days in Florida. Your thoughts on the conviction of Aaron Hernandez?
As we say in the crime business, there's still two bodies to go. he's got two more bodies, and it's just amazing that somebody with $40 million in their back pocket, a hero to the world, can just screw his life up so quickly and so finitely. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Beth, we have a question for you before we get log out of here via dial answer. They want to know, did you know about this incident referring to Eric Gardner? At the time of Gardner's death, his records were checked because it was reported he had a felony. If they were checked, how is it all of mainstream media missed reporting about this incident, which may have had some bearing on Gardner's alleged resisting on that day of his death, or on the fact that it may have been known he had filed a civil suit? This was a sexual assault. It does not make any difference if the office sought sexual pleasure, since it's known many are about. Is it known if the DA's office introduced this information to the grand jury on Officer Daniel P? Let's see here. If not, why not? Yes.
Okay, it's not known whether or not that it's not known whether or not that was before the grand jury. There is an effort right now to get to disclose what was presented to the grand jury. I think the New York appellate courts are actually looking at that, but it's not public information. I did not know that. You're talking about the Staten Island chokehold case. The Staten Island man, yes. Eric Garner, who was killed by Daniel Pantaleo, and the grand jury did not indict Pantaleo, the NYPD officer, for any level of homicide. Much to the surprise of not just the community, but I'm told, the district attorney and others. So, I mean, because it was caught on video, that really obviously helps, one understand understand the crime and what happened. I don't know if the video captures everything that happened, and if the question suggests that Garner may have resisted because he had another case pending. I don't know. I can't answer that. I can't tell you why mainstream media missed it. If all of this is true, I have to look into this because this question is catching me way off guard. I did not know this. I've only done a little bit of reporting on the Eric Garner case, so I can't answer it any further. I apologize. I'll have to look into that.
No problem. And the next case you'll be covering on your website is the James Holmes case, right?
James Holmes is, and Robert Durst I'm following, and the Justin Ross Harris I'm following in Georgia, the baby who died in the hot car. I'll be following the McStay family in Southern California. They were murdered. The business partner of Mr. McStay is accused. Those are just some of them.
And yes, it's been 10 years for Scott Peterson. It's been 10 years that Natalie